Okay. Hello, everyone. It's really good to see you. And I hope that all of you have had a really refreshing Easter break. I'm not Lars, obviously. He could make it today, so I'm stepping in for him today. So what to expect today? So today is a book talk, and I guess that many of you are aware of this format now. So we have like 10 minutes extra, which means that we have altogether like 40 minutes, which means that there will be like ample time for Tatjana to present her book, and then there's some 5 or 7 or 10-ish minutes for Tone, and then there's like 20 minutes for discussion for all of us. Let me also say that this is the first of 4 book talks this like upcoming month. As you all know, MF researchers are very productive, so we'll hear more about 4 different books that have been published. But today, it's Tatjana's books. Tatjana Schnell is a professor of existential psychology, and she has just published the 2nd edition of a book called The Psychology of Meaning in Life, Insights and Applications. And she'll get to present the book, and then Tone Stangeland Kaufman, who's a professor of practical theology here at MF, will offer her response, and then I open up the floor for all of you for discussion. Tatjana, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about this book. The Psychology of Meaning in Life. What is it about? Ample time to discuss the book? Not really. So I will just give you some glimpses of what it is about, what I'm writing about, and what has changed in the last years, as it is the 2nd edition and the 2nd English edition, and actually it's the 3rd edition of the book, which first came out in German, and in German it's already the 3rd edition. So there's been some 10 years since the first one. The book first starts with a question of definition. This thing called meaning, what is it? Can we define it? What is meaning, and what is meaning in life then? If we understand what we mean by meaning, can we transfer that to this big idea of a meaningful life? And importantly, the book is not about meaning of life, which is so easily confused. When we hear about meaning and life, we often think about, the meaning of life. And the book doesn't tell you anything about the meaning of life. If it exists, we psychologists don't have anything to matter with that and to say that might be right or that might be wrong. This is work that is empirical. That means this research is focused on meaning in life. It focuses on what people view as meaningful, how they experience it, what contributes to meaningfulness, what the consequences are. And for some people, that is closely tied to this idea of the meaning of life. They say, well, my life is meaningful because I know there is a meaning of life. Others say, well, I don't believe that there is a meaning of life. Well, I don't know what it is. I don't have access to it, but still I want to live meaningfully. So both can exist next to each other, but of course they are also linked. And people who see a meaning of life often have it somehow somewhat easier to find meaning in life, but it's not an automatic process that says, okay, if I know what the meaning of life is, I know how to live meaningfully in this society today. So the psychology of meaning in life, therefore, is an empirical project. It requires what we call operationalization. It's the question of, if we have this concept, how can we translate it into something that can help us invite people to share what it means for them, break it down into experiences, into easy words, into questions and methods in order to eventually assess it. Assessing meaning in life, evaluating it, studying it, that has been the project I've been following since 2000. And I started with a broad process of grounded theory. because we didn't know anything then about what it was that gives meaning to life for many different people. The assumption was, well, of course it's religion, so no need to look further, is it? But then, at least in Germany, where I started that research, the churches were quite empty. So should we just assume, okay, so people were meaningless? That's it. Okay, churches are empty. So, okay, Germany is void of meaning. And I had the sense that quite many people had something to do with their lives. They had an idea of mattering. So I thought, okay, there might be more to it than that. And I started the grounded theory approach, which means without having hypotheses beforehand and trying to test them. I searched with many different methods what it is that people find meaningful, with in-depth interviews, photo studies, focus groups. So it was a kind of triangulation, we call it. We then gave that findings back to our research participants to validate it. So we had the sense that for you meaning is this or that. Do you agree or do you see it differently? And from that process, there came the development of a questionnaire in order to allow for quantitative studies. So we could then ask many, many different people in different countries and have more generalizable findings on questions of meaning. And especially that quantitative approach then allowed to understand that meaning in life is multidimensional. It's not just the question of, is there meaning in your life or not? But there are different dimensions that are worth looking at. It's different experiences. Some people have meaningfulness in their lives. Others are in a crisis of meaning, and still others don't have meaning, but they don't care. They don't search for it. They are indifferent. And then, apart from these experiences, there's the question, where does the meaning come from? And with that grounded theory approach, we actually identified 26 sources of meaning, a very broad tapestry of sources, and they can be summarized by 5 dimensions. Some of them are related to myself, some to close others, some to order, tradition, and security, and the others are related to self-transcendence. That is either vertical self-transcendence, as in religion and spirituality, but I can also transcend myself within this world, for example, through nature-relatedness, social commitment, or generativity. But probably the most interesting of these dimensions is the question of meaningfulness. So what is a meaningful life? What do people experience when they say, my life is meaningful? Meaningfulness is an experience. It is a way of being, of thinking, acting, feeling, relating. And it is an experience based on the trust that this life is worth living. It is an experience, and therefore it is subjective. Nobody from the outside can tell me, oh, your life is obviously meaningful or obviously meaningless. It is me in a certain situation in my life, in a context, viewing this life and evaluating it as more or less meaningful. It is relational in that I, in that situation, refer to my past, to my future, to myself, to others, to society, the environment, to the cosmos, and try to find out, where am I in all of that? And it is dynamic. It's not the case that we grow up and when we're 18, there's the meaning and we have it, and that's it for the end of, until the end of our lives. It can change depending on what we experience, depending on life situations and phases of life. And this experience of meaningfulness, this subjective relational dynamic experience, is expressed in 4 specific elements that people report when they say, my life is meaningful. It's a sense of orientation. I have found my path. I have a direction in life. I know what I stand for and what I won't tolerate. There is coherence between my inner self and who I can be in the outer world, between my values and my acts. The different roles I hold, they fit together. There is a sense of significance. I experience that I matter. My being and my acts matter. They have consequences. I can contribute something. And it is a sense of belonging. I have a place in this world. I'm part of something larger than myself. It's not just existing, not just surviving. It's more to life. If people want meaning in life, they want more than just living. What has changed in the last decades? More than 20 years ago, we now see in the data that external factors influence more what people experience. We see that global crises like the climate crisis and social and political conflicts, they seem to fuel the search for meaning, and there is less indifference in industrialized countries. We also say, more than several years ago, education and socioeconomic status influence how and if people have access to a meaningful life, to ways of expressing and experiencing meaning. And we see that minority status, for example, regarding sexual orientation, gender identity, also affects experiences of meaning, and a sense of social alienation or loneliness influences meaning in a negative way. They all seem to create a sense of insecurity, and they thus reduce those experiences of belonging, significance, coherence, and orientation. Another insight that became more prominent in the last years is what are actually the consequences of living a meaningful life. What we see in many, many studies is people who have a meaningful life are healthier physically in all kinds of ways, less symptoms, less pain, less diseases. They even live longer. I can tell you why. I don't have the time now. It's not a miracle, but it's quite reasonable, as with meaning in life, you are motivated to live healthily and you have a kind of buffer against stress. You also are more healthy psychologically. Moreover, people who have meaning in their lives, they are more happy and satisfied with life. So meaning is good, isn't it? It's good for us. But is it also good for others? If I am a person with a meaningful life, does it mean I'm a good citizen? Does my being contribute to something positive? That is not so obvious at all. And often people just assume it. Meaning is something good, isn't it? So it's good and there can't be anything strange or critical about it. What we see is, on average, that meaningfulness is associated with more altruism and pro-social orientation, more volunteering, higher social commitment, more responsibility. But these are only statistical correlations. We also know and see that meaningfulness, as I have said now, is this experience of being involved, of being part of something good. And that can be reached in many, many ways. And as a study has shown, it can also be reached in collective hatred. When people are invited to think of whom they actually hate, and then to dwell in that hatred and think what it is, why it is, and so on, that gives you a sense of agency and of orientation, and that thus also of meaningfulness. So that means if we lack a critical self perspective, there is a strong risk of misuse of this meaningfulness. Meaning can be hijacked by the loudest voices, by big promises and easy answers. For example, by distinguishing clearly between us and them, the in-group, which is so good and I am part of it, and the others who are not that valuable. Because such a position offers easy belonging orientation, coherence, and significance. Authoritarian and extreme positions, they offer easy meaning in a way, because they offer an escape from personal responsibility. That, in a way, gives us a problem as democracies that see themselves as open societies. We need more effort than authoritarian, dogmatic, extremist worldviews in order to include citizens, to connect them, to motivate them. Because our society is characterized by multi-optionality, which invites doubt and insecurity, so many things to choose from, what is right. The freedom of choice, which also gives that sense of individual responsibility we often haven't learned to use. We have a market-driven environment that needs reflection and awareness of how should we actually deal with it? What should we go for? Is it always about growth? Is it about consumerism? If not, what is worth committing to? So all these topics in an open society, they need existential awareness and existential communication in order to accompany people in finding their meaning in life. That is an area which theology and the church surely have significant expertise for. That's why I'm very interested to hear what Tone will say about what she has read in this book and what she found in it. Thanks for responding, Tone.
Well, thank you very much, Tatjana, for inviting me to respond to you and to this book. I think ever since Lars Johan Danvald got to know you, he has told me, you need to read Tatjana Schnell, you need to get to know her. And so for a long time, I've been wanting to delve into your work, and this was a nice introduction. And you've asked me to respond from the perspective of practical theology. So this might be a little boring for some, but we'll see. Practical theology is an academic discipline with some kind of identity issues, which means that it can mean a lot of different things in different contexts. And I think the Norwegian or a Nordic kind of part of practical theology has been quite, in a way, influenced from the continental European German tradition to a certain extent. But on the other hand, over the last 20-25 years, there has been a shift towards the Anglo-American practical theology kind of trajectory, and those differ in certain ways. And I would say that the Nordic and continental European practical theology would have stronger kind of a stronger leaning towards the psychology of religion and also sociology of religion, and hence would be closer to approaching research in a way that you do, and also methodologically and epistemologically in a way that I think many practical theologians can relate to the way you work with your research and also the way it's written in this book. And others, especially those practical theologians who would be more inclined towards systematic or constructive theology and would maybe approach the research in different ways. And since you distinguish between meaning of life and meaning in life, some practical theologians would be more kind of wanting to say something about meaning of life and more kind of in a normative theological way. Others would be more interested in exploring meaning in life and what this also would mean to research participants empirically. So I think there is this kind of continuum among practical theologians also in ways in which we would approach your work. I really enjoyed reading the book. It's so clearly based on your extensive research, Tatjana, and many previous works you can kind of zipping through here, but it's still written in a very accessible style and way, which I think makes it a very good book to use in teaching classes and courses and so on. So it would be good for students. And for me, it's been as a practical theologian, I can learn and be inspired from it in several ways. I think your definition of meaningfulness, as you said, as coherence, significance, orientation, and belonging, and also a meaningfulness being meaning in action. I think that resonates a lot with the focus of many practical theologians, and also how we so many times use the term meaning to generate meaning-making processes, those kind of things. But very often we tend to use meaning in a more of an everyday sense. And I think what makes this book really helpful is that you are very careful to define the way you use meaning in life, and as you said, to operationalize it so that it is possible to break it into areas that can actually be researched in a way I think that is meaningful to people also. But I really think that is a very helpful resource also for researchers working in fields that kind of border this field of meaning in life and existential psychology. And also the questionnaire that you have developed. And also, so I really think that there is a lot here for theologians to use, also if they want to be more normative in a sense. But I really think that there has been an empirical turn also in theology, and that to really acknowledge the theological voices of ordinary people, and how that should also be considered a real voice in negotiating also normative theology. And I think really this kind of work would be helpful in that sense. Also, methodologically, I'm really inspired by the way that you have used triangulation to do really careful qualitative grounded theory work, and to really try to really pursue what do these research participants mean when they say, well, family is important to me, or my work is important, or I'd like my grandchild to have a meaningful profession or do something good for others, and to really you use the terminology of the laddering methodology to really kind of try to get deep down into what does this really mean. And I can recognize that from qualitative interviewing myself, but then also to take this kind of qualitative insight and develop this quite complex, comprehensive questionnaire. I think you've really made the best out of those two worlds of the quantitative and qualitative research, and for me that's inspirational, because I've been much more in the qualitative kind of trajectory, and that also holds true for most practical theologians, at least in the Nordic countries and the Anglo-American countries. Previously, German practical theologians would do quite a lot of quantitative work, but that has also diminished a bit. But I think this is kind of keeping these together can really help us develop knowledge in a very helpful sense. Also, practical theologians educate ministers, deacons, religious educators to work in churches, and especially those working within pastoral care and counseling. I think to those practitioners, this book is a super resource, also to both in terms of knowing more about meaning in life, but also as there are like questions of reflections following each chapter, and also some models. And I think some of these tools can be helpful also to practitioners working with confidence and parishioners. So in that sense, also, I think there are helpful overlapping and interesting resources. There are two examples, one of meaningfulness and one of kind of crisis of meaning, that especially caught my attention. I'll end with those. The first one is pilgrimage, because that has also been because you have seen especially looked at the Via Compostela, St. James part of it, and found that pilgrims who were interviewed before and after this pilgrimage really experienced an increase in meaning, and that was very significant in your findings and results, and that's been the case in others as well. And quite a few theologians have also researched pilgrimage, and for me, working within the field of spirituality, I've seen that there is this tendency that I've called a new old spirituality, to pick up old classic spiritual practices, religious practices, but to approach them in new ways with new kind of motivation and in new places, maybe new populations. For example, what we've seen in Norway is that prisoners have been given the chance to embark on a pilgrimage to Nidaros, to the cathedral there. And that has been very, very significant to those who have been able to do that. Also in terms of identity shifts from being viewed as prisoners to being regarded as pilgrims and as one of the other kind of pilgrims in this community of pilgrims, but also in many other ways. And I really think that there are theological, this is also theologically significant, but also how this clearly, you could have interviewed these incarcerated pilgrims as well and I'm sure that if we had used your SOMI questionnaire, and if you had some of your perspectives, I'm sure that they would have been able to also report existential meaning in life. And so I really thought that was an interesting overlap also with these disciplines. And the second one was the phenomenon of hikimori, of severe social withdrawal that I was first introduced to a couple of years ago at a practical theological conference in Seoul, South Korea, of people refusing to leave their homes or even rooms, an extreme version of hjemmesitta, just to put it that way, and to use the concept as you do of existential indifference, and to try to make sense of this phenomenon from various perspectives. But I think it's an increasing phenomenon, not only in Japan or South Korea, but also in a number of other countries, and also with different kinds of conceptualization. But I really think that looking upon that with the meaning in life perspective was really interesting to read and see. And so those are just two concrete small examples of how I find that this book and your work then can really enlighten some themes and fields that are also very relevant to research in practical theology. So thank you. It's been an inspiration to read.
Thank you very much.